We're going to use Zoom again. We're going to head off to the United States and catch up with a young man called Michael Perez. Michael, welcome to The Informer.
Thank you very much for having me, George. I appreciate it.
It's our joy, our pleasure, because I've been having a good look at some of the things that you've done, some of the things that you're doing, and some of the things that you're planning, and they're super exciting. Just give people a sense of just how many things you've hooked up to your wagon and the sorts of work that you can offer to people who want to get online. Come on, give me a heads up. Where do we start with Michael Perez?
Of course, but I have to preface that it's really careful when you do a lot of things that you don't do a lot of nothing. And you try to hone in on your skills and really try to perfect your craft at a very specific niche and then expand outwards carefully. In terms of what I do, I started off as someone who used to make websites in his basement for a few dollars over the weekend. And eventually, I really focused less about making money and more about offering value to people. And before I knew it, I was only one person. I can only do one thing. I started expanding outwards. So from a web development company, I expanded into a subsidiary service of cloud computing and hosting. I was sending those funds elsewhere when I was making websites. I decided to hold on to them. Now I've expanded outwards into marketing, and now we do all sorts of really cool stuff with PR. We get people in the news, and in retrospect, and now I work with publication companies. So now I have all the know-how to build publication companies. So we tack on behind the scenes, and we do all of their online infrastructure. So a lot of these tools have been reused, and it's kind of blossomed into something that we fully represent people online, from the technical end, from building websites, getting their technical infrastructure set up online, to getting them exposed in the media and getting them where they want to be, for entrepreneurs, for public figures, for singers, for actors, you name it.
When you say you name it, the thing that I've noticed through all of that, you've left absolutely no boundaries for anything or anyone. As far as you're concerned, you're limitless in your possibilities. And we should touch on something that you've had to endure and had to cope with and had to learn and relearn from very, very young. You were diagnosed with ADHD.
Right.
Now, so many people say to us that this is a problem, this is a concern, this is a way to narrow one's possibilities. For you, though, you're living proof that you've taken that challenge on, you've taken that condition on, and you've bounded past all those limitations because you've created, unique measures or practices. Some call them rather unorthodox ways to get ahead. Can you speak to some of this? Because it's so exciting listening to one, you, and two, this journey that you've been on for the last, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, and I have to say, George, the journey has barely begun. It's barely started. No, I really mean that. And I operate every day like it's my first day on the job, as if there's so much to learn.
That passion, by the way, Michael, is a measure and a very good indicator why you will be a fantastic and why you are a success, but why you'll even grow even more. I think that that is
never happened.
No. Can I just say, without that passion, without that drive, nothing happens.
Right. You really have to like it, and you gotta, because that's how you make yourself unique, when you really love what you do. Because you don't look at everything as being transactional. Because if you looked at what I did as transactional, it would be very clear to almost everyone that it's just not worth it. It's so much time. And I have to answer your initial question, but I will say this: when I first graduated college, all of my friends were getting top paid jobs at big companies, starting $90,000, $120,000, Amazon, Facebook, Google, you name it. I was working for myself, doing practically slave labor in the sense where I was extremely undervalued, making, what did I make that year? I made like $20,000, and I worked 4 times harder than everyone around me. But that's because I had my eye on a bigger prize. I had a longer term projection. But the model that I was subscribing to was exponential. And those kind of models take a lot of time to get started. But once you reach that inflection point and then you start heading straight up, it makes it all worth it. And think of, you can love to be a programmer, but that doesn't necessarily mean you want to spend your life calibrating a GPS at Google, right? You want to be able to do what you like doing, because when you do what you like doing, things become unique and you have a passion for it. And then it blossoms into something bigger than you ever imagined. Now, hopping back to the ADHD, as a kid, you're always labeled by your disabilities. And it's hard not to fall into that trap because you're a young person, your mind is not developed, and everyone who has an authoritative figure above you is telling you the same thing. But the trick here is that you got to learn how to weaponize your disabilities. You've got to learn how to find how they make you unique, capitalize on them, and then you'll find yourself in a playing field where you're offering value that other people can't. And that's really where it goes. Now, it takes a lot of confidence to diverge off that well-worn path in life. It really, really does. But from the very early days in my life, I've taken tiny steps in college or in elementary school and in high school, and realizing, hey, I'm doing exactly what I was told not to do. I was told to come to class every single day. I was awarded strictly for discipline. And here I am, not going to class, learning things on my own, coming for exams, and I'm doing good. And I'm finding a platform that works for me. This mentality, if you think of it abstractly, this confidence to diverge off the well-worn path has blossomed over time, where I started becoming more and more confident, taking bigger strays off the well-worn path. Yeah. To the point where I didn't show up in college, to the point where I started doing really, really well. And the things that I was told that I couldn't do, I used to get private attention in mathematics. Those are the things that I was actually really good at, and I majored in. I majored in computer science.
But Michael, you weren't being a truant. You didn't turn up, but you were also at that time working on your skills and your skill set. It's not as if you were going truant and deciding you were going to go and sit on the beach and smoke for hours. For you, it was another way of doing what you needed to do to focus, to actually create a different pathway that was very comfortable and very natural for you. Am I on the money?
100%, George.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the thing you gotta ask yourself. We all want success. We all want to do good things in life. But that's not the right question is, do you want to become successful? The right question is how much do you want it? What are you willing to give up to get it? Do you care more about your 8 hours of sleep? Do you care more about your weekends? Do you care more about doing nothing from 6 to midnight every single day? We all, listen, it's easy for some people to say where they have a job they don't necessarily love, but they have to do it. They got to pay rent at the end of the month. They got to have ends meet. They've got to, it's not like they can just cut it and start learning how to become a graphic designer for 8 to 10 months. But the truth is you don't realize how much time you have. And you don't realize that if you really want something, there's a lot you could give up. For example, you might not want to move in back to your parents' home, right? It's embarrassing. You're 30 years old. Why would you want to do that? But if you can cut your survival costs, where you can reduce rent, you can reduce the cost for food down to nearly zero, you have an opportunity and you're fortunate to be able to invest in learning a skill set for 8 to 12 months while you have a day job or whatever it is you do. The trick is to break out of those costs that force you into doing menial work or laborized work or work you don't truly love. And that's the hardest point. Once you get past that, it's much easier. So my advice to people who are, saying, hey, okay, it's great, you're an entrepreneur. It's great that you're pursuing your own dreams, but I don't have that context, that opportunity. My answer to them is you do. You just need to be patient and you just need to really want it. You can have a 9-to-5 job from 6 to midnight. What are you doing every day? Are you partying on the weekends? Are you willing to give that up for the next year or so? Yeah. Are you willing to move it back with your parents?
That's a very good point that you make, that will and that sacrifice. What are you prepared to sacrifice to make those very important little gains that set you on the pathway? There's a young 22-year-old who's playing for the San Diego Padres. He just signed a huge contract. He's the shortstop for the Padres. His name is Fernando Tatis Jr. And he signed up a 14-year deal, Michael, for $340 million. But he's also had to sacrifice many hours, many weekends, working at becoming the best possible young shortstop in the American Baseball League. And now the world is his oyster. So if we can grab that analogy and push it back to everyone else, if I'd said to him half a dozen years ago, 10 years ago, mate, work in your craft, get very good, and someone will sign you up for $340 million, what would you have said? You would have laughed in my face. And the same applies now. If I had said to a young man or woman, listen, follow Michael Perez's advice to the T, and absorb what he's actually really saying, and there are no boundaries to what you want to pursue. Is that correct?
There are no boundaries, and unfortunately, I don't know a magic potion. There's no easy way out, and if someone knows an easy way out, I would love to hear it. But
It's not so much easy, it's clarity. And what you bring, and I listen to it even in your delivery, Michael, there's enormous clarity. Clarity in purpose, clarity in ideas. You understand how to put those thoughts together, and you make them not only enormously engaging, but very easy to understand. Now that is a gift. That is a gift, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the truth is, I don't even know where I'll be in 6 months. So in some ways, I'm completely have no clarity, but I'm very clear. And I believe what you're saying is correct, is that I don't worry about this. I don't worry too much about the castle. I worry about the brick in my hand. I need to place it perfectly.
Well,
and that's how you give yourself the opportunity, or you give yourself the tools. So when the opportunity does present itself, you can make the best decisions. And I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to say.
Go.
You know, a lot of us who are going to college, we're not confident, or we're early on in the stages of our life. We don't even know what we want to do. We're kind of in this chicken and egg situation where we need to know more before we know what we want to do. And, you know, we don't know what we want to do to begin with. So my advice to people like that is, let's just say you're studying psychology and you don't even know if you want to become a psychologist, right? You can say, oh, I don't want to do it. It's way too much work. I'm halfway through the semester. You start slacking, your grades go down. Now you want to go into computer science. It's too late. You don't have the GPA. It's harder to get through. My advice to people is exactly this. You don't worry about 3, 4, 5 years from now. Right now, you're taking 5 courses. Do the absolute best you can. And you'll have the benefits of being able to switch to the career you want to switch to. You'll understand how humans work better. You'll understand emotion. These classes, you don't have to be a psychologist to benefit from these courses. They will help you be an entrepreneur. They'll help you be a leader. You'll find use for all these skills later. It's really, really, really hard to see the steps forward, but it's really easy to see the steps back once you've made them.
Fantastic.
So, you know, if I were to go back to college, I would have tripled down on the side courses that I hated. I would. The ones that I gave in chicken scrap, you know, notes in my English classes, those are the courses that I wish I'm like, how would writing about a poem help me in a computer science?
Let me pause you there. Those English classes have given you the flexibility and the that wonderful English skills that you are using to not only transfer your insight and your passion, but allow others into the storytelling. And I think that, to me, suggests that you didn't waste your time. You picked up just enough scraps to get you over the line, my boy. You did well.
Just enough. And, you know, let me tell you this. In college, if you had told me, Mikey, you'd fall in love with biology, Mikey, you'd work in journalism, I would tell you, you know nothing about me. You have no idea what you're talking about. Really.
Well,
and I don't even consider myself a programmer. I look at computer science and programming as a tool set to express myself in science.
Well, I see you as so much more. I see you as a great writer. I see you as a great, a greatly inspirational figure. Now, if people want to know a bit more about Michael Perez, or Mikey Perez, how do we reach out and touch you?
You can find me on social media at Michael Perez. My social media handle on almost everything, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, is at Mikey, MIKEYPERES. My nickname is Mikey. It kind of stuck since I was a kid. I couldn't get rid of it. But my official name is Michael Perez, and you can find me at michaelperez.com as well.
Mikey, it's been a delight getting you on The Informer. Continued success. And as you said earlier, there are no parachutes. Go for it. Go as far as you want.
George, you're amazing, and I appreciate your time, buddy.
Thank you, my friend. All the very best. That's Mikey, or Michael Perez, on The Informer, all the way via Zoom in the United States. Thank you, Mikey.